Hoblob.
Hoblob.
You stumbled over it.
I'll wait till it says recording.
Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, September 11th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. Go ahead and start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Alder Jim Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Sidney Bremer.
Present.
Commissioner Darius Daniels.
Present.
Commissioner Ken Ravinsky.
Present.
And Commissioner Michael Paradek.
Present.
Moving on to approval of the agenda. Approval of the agenda for the September 11th, 2023 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Paradek and a second by Commissioner Bremer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on then to the approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the August 14th, 2023 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Alder Jim Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Ravinsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then moving on to regular business, and we are starting with a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We'll now open the public hearing on item number 1. Public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit amendment at 1809 to 1817 Deckner Avenue for the purpose of expanding a community living arrangement use serving 9 or more persons within an office residential district, submitted by Paula Jolly of the Mandolin Foundation, Old Number 5 LLC property owner.
Thank you, Chair. So this item here is probably familiar to everybody. We initially looked at the CUP back in June of this year for this property at Deckner. As you're seeing here, the site is zoned OR, and with that comes a CUP for a community living arrangement use on the site. So when we first happened to see this property, the question at play was for a use for a CLA of up to 20 residents. The request now for the amendment is to expand it to 30. So the reason before was, as we're looking at this overhead view, was the Mandolin Foundation had access to a little over half the building, the western part of the building, but they did not have it for the eastern part of the building. In the coming months, or in the past few months, they've now had access to the entire building itself. With that in mind, the request is to change this to become a facility that could be upwards of 30 individuals within the facility itself. So what we're seeing right here is updated plans. Preliminary, they're not the actual official plans, but they're looking at for both the first floor and the second floor. So you'll note that most of the entire site has been filled down with either residents or offices. Those offices would be in support of the overall mission of the CLA itself. So on the first floor, you'll note living space, office space, and bedrooms. There are now, from the previous CUP, the plans call for around 9 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms with 2 half, 1 group dining room, 1 large kitchen with 2 prep areas, and 1 laundry room. With that in mind, before it was noted that didn't meet every last bit of bulk requirements, but a final plan would need to meet that to meet the certain thresholds to reach in order to accommodate such uses. The updated plans now call for 14 bedrooms, 5 full bathrooms, 1 half, 1 group dining room, 1 large kitchen area with 2 prep areas, and then 1 smaller kitchen, and still 1 laundry room. So with this in mind, the changes have been noted, and they would take up the entire overall site.
Okay, all right, thank you. So now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who wants to speak in favor, in opposition, or to just provide information only. Is there anyone looking to speak? Is there anyone looking to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 2, consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit amendment at 1809 to 1817 Deckner Avenue for the purpose of expanding a community living arrangement use serving 9 or more persons within the office residential district, submitted by Paula Jolly of the Mandolin Foundation, Old Number 5 LLC property owner.
Thank you. So when we were considering, does this facility meet the needs to have the upgrade to make it to 30 here? There are some specific item notes to note that we should review. Mind you, this is not the final overall site plan, but can this facility handle 30 people? The answer is it probably can. There have to be some tweaks, so potentially. The kitchen and dining room areas are noted on the first floor. As noted on the initial plans here, the dining space can handle 24 individuals. They'd have to find room to comfortably fit 30 folks if they want to fit 30 individuals on the site. The current plans call for 1 stackable washer and dryer and 1 wash basin. If you want to meet this, you need to have, for every 10 individuals, 1 washer, 1 dryer, 1 wash basin. So the following plans would need to show 3 of each. Finally, the site has 2 living rooms and 1 activity room. It will have to be noted in the following plans that overall space has to be 600 square feet for each of those individual areas. They seem to make that right now, but there's some tweaks to make this work that could come into play. So additionally, there's some office space. As far as the rest of the bulk requirements, the site meets them as far as parking, things of that sort. So staff does recommend approval. You'll note it's the same recommendation that we had before from the CUP, essentially just changing the overall capacity to reach 30 individuals. And then in the following plans, it would need to meet the bulk requirements for the site itself. But otherwise, this is the same conditions that were placed back in June on the site.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff or discussion amongst the commission? Go ahead, Commissioner Bremer.
Just for clarification, since we considered this in the summer for the smaller number, I'm assuming that at that time we saw the operational plan and the contract for the residents. And
We did.
That's why they are included this time.
Correct, yep, same one.
Thank
yes.
you, I remember that they were very solid.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rubinski and a second by Commissioner Praddick. Any further discussion? All right, I'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward to City Council for September 19th. Okay. All right, and then moving on to item number 3, which is another public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Times. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. We'll now open the public hearing on item number 3. Public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a tavern bar use within the special purpose residential light industrial district at 1234 State Street, submitted by Tony Batcher of Trisky JR LLC, property owner and applicant.
Sure. So this property is near the intersection of 9th and State, just off of Broadway, by the Drop Forge. The site itself is part of the aforementioned special purpose residential light industrial district, and is adjacent then to another existing bar to the south, some industrial to the north, and some residents back over to the west. It's on a pretty tight little site that's a little over 6,000 square feet. As you see, it's an existing bar. This is Bulldog's Bar, so why are we here? Why have we written this up? The issue at play is the applicant is looking to create a pavilion in the back of the property. Staff felt it was appropriate then to codify this with an actual conditional use, because taverns are conditional use in the district, because there is the request to make the improvements. That's pretty sizable. We felt it should go through and get the approval from Plan Commission, from Common Council to proceed. So as you see here, this is the front of the building as it exists right now. It is a bar. In your packet, there are a number of photos provided of both the interior of the building and the exterior in the backyard of the building, if you will. So here's some more photos of the existing backyard with some recreational area, a fire pit, and some picnic tables. So the backyard is being used amongst patrons, but the proposal that's come in is to give the idea of a pavilion in the back. There are no solid plans just yet, but staff has been speaking with the applicant and feel that there is room within the bulk requirements to have such a facility. You'll note a diagram that was put forward. There are a few things that were scratched off just to note just how close the applicant felt they could get to the property line, and just making sure with a thorough review of the setbacks for the district, how far they need to be off from both the district and to residents in the back. So there is area to make a pavilion area that's 6 feet off the side lot lines and then 20 feet from the rear lot line, which would lead to a pavilion that could be as big as around 38 by 40 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood. They've attached some drawings with this to where it shows the area being enclosed with some garage doors, but more of a three-season type set backyard area back in the district. So just going back to the neighborhood itself, noted it's an existing bar. Down to the south at the southeast corner, that is also a bar. Back to the north, there is some more industrial, and over to the west there are some residential homes. That's part of this district. It is a mix over in this district, and it is stated within the code that there is a preference given to industrial and then the commercial businesses that serve industrial places. With that in mind, it also means that there's consideration given to places that give off sound and light, and not in this case, but other environmental factors that may come into play with industrial or commercial operations. So with that in mind, that is a part of the neighborhood itself.
Thank you. All right, and now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would wish to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 4.
Chair, if I may.
Oh, yes.
Just before we move forward, back on item 2, I made the recommendation to approve. I did not add the staff recommendations with that. I don't know if we wanted to clarify that or not. I didn't.
I think
Right.
we would have recommended.
I didn't want to make it muddy, but
Right.
I just wanted to make sure.
I think
we're doing it right.
usually it's automatically with the recommendations as written.
Right,
If we
because there
need
was
to-
nothing that was objectable about it on this case, so I
Okay.
think we're okay with that, yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
It's understood.
All right. Did I already read that? No, all right. Moving on to item number 4. Consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a tavern bar use within the special purpose residential light industrial district at 1234 State Street, submitted by Tony Batcher of Trisky JR LLC, property owner and applicant.
So with this in mind, staff does recommend approval. We like this in the sense that the conditions themselves can put a few things that codify what's happening with this tavern to what exists right now. So you'll note the driveway itself is a driveway that leads to a shed. It's 2 stackable cars. There is not room on this property to have parking in general. With this in mind, as part of the recommendations for the CP, we are requesting that formal shared parking arrangement be reviewed and approved by economic development staff and recorded with register of deeds. The applicants have spoken with neighbors down the road within 1,000 feet to see if there could be a shared parking agreement, and as of now, they have preliminary plans to go forward with that with a neighbor off to the north. So this would satisfy an issue that exists right now where there is not parking on the site. Additionally, staff would be requesting that the exterior pavilion structure itself have architectural features which are complementary and compatible with the buildings and the surrounding neighborhood. Otherwise, staff looks at this and feels that this would bring some structure to the backyard, which right now is still a bit of a hodgepodge with picnics, tables, and activity areas. So it's being used, but it's not, nothing's been codified. This would do such a thing. And if there are any questions, the applicant is here in person.
And so directly behind this property, is that a residential property?
Directly behind this property, there are 2 residential properties. We did not receive any inquiries from folks about this.
In the rear, it's a 20-foot setback from there, on the rear of the yard, correct?
Correct. They're as part of the bulk requirements for the property, they had to place a pavilion or any such structure 20 feet from the adjoining residential properties. There are only 2. It's both on the west side of the property. To both the south and the north, it's industrial or another bar.
That's a very useful graphic that you have up there, and I'm wondering if you can point out to us where is there's a medical facility in the area as well? Or is that another item on the agenda?
That was the last one.
Thank you.
Across the street, there is a medical facility. Yep.
Cancel that then. My concern is for those single-family homes, because we're talking about a pavilion that would, when the garage doors are up, be largely outdoor for musical and entertainment purposes. That sounds like a lot of noise that would be quite different from industrial noise that tends to be a sort of constant sound.
Sure. Understandable. With that in mind, staff consider that as far as an issue. Given the nature of this district itself, and I hear what you're saying, that it's different than an industrial bang, bang, bang.
It is a unique district.
But the code does note that both industrial and commercial uses, it is expected there be more noise than a typical neighborhood when you live in this district. So because that aspect of the code specifically states out loud that it's to be expected, we felt that in combination with the existing backyard setting, which has recreational elements to it already, with the horseshoes and the picnic tables, that this addition would be another part of the complementary piece to that area. Other neighboring places like Cheesesteak Rebellion, and I'm blanking on the bar to the south, also have pavilions that are outside as well, or structured deck areas that are outside.
Cropsies.
Cropsies, yeah.
Okay, can you go back to the previous image which I found so helpful? That one. The pub to the south also has a backyard.
Yeah, right. They do not have one. This is parking. This is Cheesesteak Rebellion, and that's their deck area over here. And then Cropsies is back to the south on the southeastern corner of this block. That and they have outdoor areas, a larger one than this.
Okay, those are both somewhat more removed from the single-family homes.
I do
And
believe
that
that,
tree coming down, of course, is going to take away what is
Yeah.
currently a kind of protection. So I hear what you're saying, and I know that this whole area was set up as a unique area because of the confluence of previous uses. But I'm still stuck with that.
well,
Right.
noise ordinance would still apply, so they couldn't have bands out there past 10 o'clock. They they were making a racket.
Right, they'd be under the typical
Ordinances.
noise ordinances that would be
As far as
applicable.
time.
Correct.
The only point I was gonna make out is this bar on the corner does have some activity out here, not regularly, but they do.
You are.
It's a paved patio type area. This picture is dated. So, yeah, it's kind of a parking lot and outdoor space, so to speak.
And
I
the
think
backyard is being utilized already by patrons. This just kind of puts a structure over them and
Formalizes it.
formalizes it, yeah.
There's a big jump, though, from horseshoes to
A band.
musical entertainment.
Yeah.
I would like to hear from the applicants on this, so I guess I'll move to open the floor.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bremer and a second by Commissioner Pratt to open the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, is the applicant here?
The one thing I would like to say about it.
If you could step forward and state your
Okay.
name and address for the record, please. Sorry.
No, you're good. My name's Tony Batcher, 1234 State Street, Bulldogs Bar. We have had music out there in the back in the past. So, I mean, the music, and I understand what you're saying, and it would be no interruption to anybody around us, I've never, ever had any issues with that there. And like Dave was saying too, the gentleman next door to me, the business there, they have music out there and stuff, I just, I'll be honest with you, I host a lot of golf outings and stuff, and one of my issues is if I have, people there and it rains, I have nowhere to go with anybody.
Yeah.
Inside of my bar, it's very small. I'm looking at about 900 square feet. So I do a suicide prevention, I do a thing for breast cancer, so I do some golf outings and stuff, so if it rains or if I have any kind of issue like that there, then, it's just a tough thing. This way here, if I got something outside, we can still go out there, we can still do our raffles and our drawings and our get-togethers and stuff. So I'm looking primarily just to bring some people in, maybe be able, if we do have rain or inclement weather is what I want. I'm not all about the music and stuff, but, I will use it for music, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing like that there,
And I do like the design. I think
Yeah.
that-
Exactly, I want the outside concept, just for the, I don't have that by me, because if it, like I said, if it rains, and everybody knows everybody likes to sit outside in the summer, that's, that's my whole point here, is to kind of like to share with these pictures that we put on together and stuff, just give everybody an idea. But, okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess while the floor is
Any
open.
questions?
I guess while the floor is open, is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Motion to close the floor?
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Pratt to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the other bars have been contacted, I'm assuming, within the radius?
Correct, yes.
And you haven't received any?
You received nothing from anybody out there on this? No.
Just wouldn't want everyone blasting music and then just keeps getting louder and louder. And it creates some problems, but as long as everyone gets along.
I'd make a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Daniels. Any further discussion? We'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward then to City Council for September 19th. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, consideration with possible action on a request to vacate 3rd Street East of South Broadway, submitted by the Department of Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, I'm not signed in, Dave, you're not going to move the ball.
Oops, sorry.
So this request is actually brought forward from our department. The redevelopment authority owns parcels to the north and south of 3rd. This particular portion of 3rd Street, I don't want to get it confused that we're, vacating the whole part of 3rd, or all of 3rd, but this part east of South Broadway. So the redevelopment authority owns property to the north and to the south. And the idea is to vacate this portion of 3rd Street. to create a larger development site when it comes to redevelopment. Potential redevelopment would be mixed use, commercial development. We, as part of and it would increase the size of the development by almost 8,000 square feet. We did contact the alderman, the neighborhood association, and, yes, sorry. Yep, so that's what the street looks like right now. You can see that the property to the south has already, that building has already been removed. The building that exists to the north is to be removed. And if you want to go to the next slide too, this is kind of a street view. So that building that's directly in front, that's to be removed. We did do, as part of the street vacation, there isn't really a huge notification process that happens. It's only to the adjoining property owners. But we felt it was important to reach out to the businesses on this block because they do utilize this alley. And it can, closing 3rd Street would impact their use of that alley. They kind of go around the back side and then the trucks pull forward and vacate and leave through 3rd Street. Now, the one thing to note about the alley is it's not city-owned, it's actually owned by the railroad. The city has a license that they pay a yearly fee on, and the purpose really is they have stormwater utility in there. But we did contact the neighbors, particular rum runners, to see if they had any feedback. And I spoke with Jeff, and Jeff is here tonight, and they did have concerns because of the use, that they use that alley and that they do use 3rd Street for. We did, as part of the process, contact different agencies. We did hear back from New Water that they have a sanitary sewer line that's just outside of the street. And then we also heard back from Department of Public Works. We recently heard back from Wisconsin Public Service on Friday, so their comments are not included in this report just because of how late I did receive them. They do have a gas line and overhead power lines that would be in 3rd Street, so there is an additional condition. And then we have some conditions from DPW. The plan with all of this is that the road technically isn't vacated until all of these conditions are met. The city or the RDA would not be vacating this property until there is a development agreement in place, and then the development agreement would stipulate the financing and all of the details involved in actually vacating 3rd Street. So these are the recommendation. This is the recommendation that we do have, which is to approve the request. And we did include the conditions from DPW, which is basically related to the petitioner or whomever would be the person potentially buying the property, to pay for all costs associated with properly vacating 3rd Street, east of South Broadway, and then to include a second condition, which is from WPS, is to include language in vacation document providing for utility easement for existing Wisconsin Public Service facilities. Jeff Hunter is here to speak if the commission so chooses to hear his comments. But that is all that I have.
I would make a motion to open the floor.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rinsky, second by Commissioner Craddock to open the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Hey, I'm Jeff Hunter. This is Paul Jacob. We're representing the owners of the property, 709 South Broadway through 715 South Broadway. And if the picture comes back up again, or the map, either one, maybe the map, there it is. So it's everything from the Mason Street Bridge south to the property in the green area that the city owns. So there are 4 properties there. Currently, there are 4 residential areas above each of those 4 buildings or partial buildings, and there are 4 businesses below them. Not all of them are operational right now, but we expect to be in full operation with all 4 November 1st. It has changed just recently from Rockabilly's Bar and Rum Runners Bar. It's now going to be Coalyard Coffee on the north end, Blue Suede Foods in the second building, At the Tracks, which is a concert venue for Friday and Saturday nights, and then the Rum Runners Bar, which is the one with the barrel out in front. And then the area right next to that is our beer garden for Rum Runners, and then we, of course, are going to see this stuff disappear. So we're thinking ahead. We utilize the alley a lot, and if 3rd Street is vacated, it's going to effectively dismiss any kind of exit from the alley. The alley is 12 feet, 8 inches wide. Most of that is pretty restricted because there's a large concrete curb which runs across I'm just going to do this really quick. Where the railroad,
There's some other pictures. in
where the
there.
railroad is right here, this is our alley, and the railroad owns this property there. So this is, at its best we can get through is 12 foot 8 inches. Rum Runners itself has up to 7 delivery trucks per week. Sometimes we don't utilize all 7 if we don't have a big order, but 7, we have to plan on 7 delivery trucks a week coming down this alley. We're responsible for snow removal, and so far we've been fortunate that when we remove the snow removal, we can take it out of the parking lot under the Mason Street Bridge and bring it down into this area. If we had to turn around, it would be impossible to do snow removal. We also have several dumpsters with the businesses that are operational when they're all working, and those are pretty big trucks, as you know, that pick up those dumpsters and dump them. So our concern going forward isn't, we're very excited about the idea of the property being developed next to us. We're just concerned that in the process of that, we don't eliminate an egress from that alleyway to the south. We assume that anybody who's developing that property would most likely want an alley also. And would utilize that. We just want to keep it on everybody's plate to consider that, and so that we don't lose that in the process of that coming up. Make sense? We sure appreciate the time to talk to you about this, and we really support getting more development in the area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to close the floor.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Commissioner Braddock to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So there won't be any other exit to the south for that alley?
Unless whoever developed it wanted to.
Put something in?
Likely not. If there was a parking
That's
lot.
literally where it ends, right there.
If there was a parking lot associated with the development, I don't know if there would be, but if there was a parking lot that went through, then you could utilize that.
Parking lot.
easement.
So can we highlight the full site that we're creating? Is it the red and then?
I'll outline
That
it.
building, yeah.
That'll all be one parcel.
Right. Currently, it's 2 smaller ones, so you have the small one on the north, south one on the south of 3rd Street, both very small to redevelop in modern time. So 3rd Street would connect those 2 together and make them a much larger site.
Is there any way we can put something on the development in the future that they have to have some kind of an exit on their most southernmost section? I mean, it kind of feels backward to be vacating a street and then saying, well, yeah, we need a street still, but.
It would hinder future developability, but I mean, you could put a condition that an easement to access that alley is provided. So whether that's through the parking lot or they have something else, but it would restrict the developer, any new developer from putting anything, depending what they wanted to put on there. But yes, you could do it.
So that alley is owned by the railroad?
Yeah.
Correct.
I was just gonna say, it kind of puts us in a tough spot.
Yeah, it's owned by the railroad. This is actually an easement from 1949. And in it, you know, the railroad, there's the railroad company shall have the right at any time to revoke this license by giving 30 days notice and writing to the licensee. I mean, so it's not, it's not ours, it's not actually the city's. So, I mean, there's an easement that we do have, or an easement, yeah, a license, they call it a license, to use and maintain that an alley back there. And because we have utilities in there.
Well, because I think about, you know, deliveries could, you know, feasibly be made through the front, but having the, you know, we're not gonna have them have the dumpsters in the front of the building, and those are big trucks. And then if they're responsible for snow removal too.
Yeah, businesses in urban areas tend to double park when they have their deliveries.
I've seen it, so.
Dumpsters typically, what you're gonna find in this area, like you see on North Broadway, as it develops more, is generally a shared dumpster enclosure. It's not typical for every business to have their own. So if you look like where Old Fort Square was, there's 2 or 3 group dumpster enclosures out there because they don't have any access to the back. Well, they do, but it's not convenient or easy, especially nowadays. You know, garbage cans back in the 40s were a lot different than giant dumpsters that we have now.
So just to understand it, so the building that's coming down, if you want to show that one on the screen. So assuming that 3rd Street stays the same, and this building comes down, what's the plan for that lot, just alone?
Well, the plan for this lot alone,
Development.
we would send it out for a request for proposals to
Sure.
see who would be interested in developing it. Again, it's a smaller lot.
But it's
so
developable. I mean, it's
Potentially.
developable.
Well, I mean, you guys are trying to combine it into one big lot. If a developer wants to come in and do something big down there, we're trying to
Right.
put
It's
all
much
that
more
together.
Much more difficult to cash flow a project that's on a very small lot.
Sure.
Unless you get a very small use.
You think about about 2 acres or more?
No, it's only a half acre.
Oh, it's only half acre.
Yeah,
26,
it's not that deep.
yeah,
Wait, what are we
26.5.
All of those together is only a half,
Wow.
even with the building that's down, 3rd Street, the lot, and then that building that's still gonna come down, that's still only a half an acre? Wow.
It's too bad the road just can't move to
Must
that
have
lot.
been
Just-
terrible.
Right.
And just allow for that, and then everything south of it. It's just-
Could we go back to the part about when this would actually take place? It was at the time when the RDA would accept a proposal, that's when this would actually happen?
Yep, once the conditions would be met. So the street won't be vacated until those conditions that are placed, which talks about the cost to properly close 3rd Street is met. And so right now, there is no funding to cover that cost. So tomorrow or whenever when city council acts on it, that's not gonna necessarily trigger the vacation. The vacation will be triggered once the road can properly be vacated.
So this is to make this lot more marketable, number one, but in terms of what's actually happening on the ground, nothing until there's actually someone serious about it. And they would still need to go through RDA prior to? Because I guess where I'm going with this is, any building that goes in there would probably have a vested interest in, number one, being friendly to the neighbors, but also maybe having access to the alley.
Right.
So I just want some sort of a check in place where if they're coming to RDA with a proposal, it's gonna go through a
And-
process and people, they'll be able to come, say all these things again, just to make sure that
Yeah,
it's
and
being
I
considered.
think the one kind of rough patch with all of this is that easement, or is that alley. You know, it's not a
It's only
city
licensed.
alley.
Right.
And at any time, 30 days.
30 days,
from now,
they can go
And
away.
if
Take it away.
you can, you know, what's the potential, you know, with more development and more users on it? I don't, you know, it's not ours. So I'm not sure, I don't.
But one point I would make out, the redevelopment authority and the city staff are very kind of keyed into this area, as you well know.
Yeah.
Just this weekend, I was down there for probably 14 hours. They had
For
all bands on
events,
deck.
music events?
And I was actually at Rum Rummers for a lot of it. But I suspect any type of development project that the RDA is going to go through, they're going to take that into consideration and get access. I mean, the RDA is a pretty sophisticated group, and they do redevelopment, downtown redevelopment all the time. You know, they may want to note that that is a desire, and let them take that at the time. I mean, obviously, if the railroad were to come in tomorrow, as Dina had said, and say, you can't use my alley anymore, the RDA would take that in consideration as well. You know, we've talked about this area extensively, staff-wise. There's also, you know, projects of Mason Street potentially altering and going much lower to grade and not being so elevated, which is going to drastically change this area as well. So everything's kind of in play. It's very healthy district right now, and we're just trying to keep that momentum going. And I do appreciate the property owners. They are started it and are continuing with that momentum.
And we don't really have plans to RFP this. Really, what started this was taking the building down. So
What
we're like,
prompted
well,
it?
if we're gonna take the building down, we should clean this up, right, and vacate this so it's ready to go for a development that's coming forward. But knowing that the DOT is working on that 10-year study right now on Mason Street, and, you know, how that might play out, you know, who knows how that will lay out in the future. But that being said, I can understand why that access is important. Whoever owns that alley in back, right, to get the dumpsters in and out. And it may be at the time that, like, a larger development were to come through, and larger, not so large, it's not but larger than what would be on two small sites there. I mean, that might be the time to look at some of those common dumpster sites and some other things at the same time, depending on what kind of development that is.
Right. Generally, we like to look at those anyway. They're usually cost savings for the business owners. They're easier for the refuse companies. And as they had mentioned, now they're plowing the alley themselves, the railroad's alley, which can all be incorporated in a redevelopment.
Right. And maybe those coal piles won't be there.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I do have a question that I would like some clarification on. It sounds as if we have relatively little control over the alley because of the railroad ownership. So what is the alternative route for the 4 properties that are potentially isolated here? How do they get in and out?
Well, generally, the way they get in now is you can still get into the northern 2 properties from Mason Street. This is Mason Street here underneath the bridge.
Right.
So these 2 can get in there. I believe there's a fence and some other outside things in this. In this area, so you kind of see some fencing and that kind of stuff. What I suspect, all other things, if the railroad were to just say, remove that alley, you can't use my alley anymore, or they rebuilt the tracks or did whatever they were doing, it would probably become an easement. Some of this stuff would have to come down, and you could access those backs of those buildings through private property. But that would have to be agreed upon between the owners. Like I said, most urban areas like this, you're going to get deliveries on the street. Look at Washington Street. You'll see the, you know, beer trucks and all the delivery trucks, food trucks, just sort of double parked. A little bit more difficult for the residents that live up above, but that would, I mean, the owners, if that were to happen, the railroad actually did that, the city would obviously help the property owners figure out something, but, and my 5-second look at it, just a second, would be get an easement and, you know, access each other's properties to get to them.
I was trying in my mind to get past more difficult to impossible, or to get from impossible to just more difficult.
Definitely not impossible.
Okay, so can you go to the map that's now displayed? How would they get in and out of the properties?
Sure, you'd have to come in this way and remove this fencing structure and continue down. That would provide access to all this back. So you're basically just moving what's a drive aisle here over onto the private property.
Okay.
But
and
they
that
would all have
be-
to, the owners of the 3 properties, or excuse me, that looks like 2 properties actually, they would have to work with each other to provide those easements.
And that would be basically in their control.
It would be in their control. I mean, at worst case scenario, The city could eminent domain part of the parking lots in the back to run a new alley if they couldn't cooperate with each other. We don't do that very often, and it's, Cheryl knows, how long of a process is that?
I would love to know the last
Long,
time.
very long time.
Very long process, but I mean, at the end of the day, we would have to shift that alley onto city property rather than railroad property. Railroads have very strange rights that are really, really exclusive.
Very historical.
So it'd be very difficult for us to get railroad property. Probably impossible, actually.
Because that's gonna be.
But the more I think about it, the more when the RDA sees a development proposal for this area, we'll probably be looking for a way to get through there.
I would think so, yeah.
I can't speak for them, but
Boone, is
I
that-
suspect they would.
Is that
And
something
I
we
like
need to
very
write in
much
there?
I like very much your idea of noting in the resolution that we urge them to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, is there a way to kind of write it in so that we have a kind of a backup or a fail-safe that, so that there is a second access to that? Do we need to be doing that?
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
I think it's
'Cause
almost
the R- I mean-
overcomplicating it.
Right.
RDA knows what they're doing. They're gonna,
Right.
I mean, they're gonna try to sell the property and they're gonna do what's best for it.
Right.
Can we note that we trust that they will do their best?
What you can do is, you can put your desire in there, note that you would like to see access
That's
when
all.
this is redeveloped
I'm not
to the
talking
back
about
alley as long as
condition,
the
I'm talking
alley
about a sig-
exists.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, it's the council that's gonna make that call, or the RDA.
I understand that.
The beauty of it is though, when the RDA typically sends out a request for proposals, starts courting a developer, they will get preliminary plans in that they'll look at and adjust. And like in this case, we're gonna want buildings to kind of blend in and have a zero setback.
Yep.
You know, we don't want to ruin what's good down there. You know,
Dave makes it sound like it's a different RDA staff than him. Right, but who reviews the plans?
I review the plans. But yeah, you could put a third
Dave.
condition in there that access to that alley should be, significantly considered.
Yes, considered.
So,
We'd like
could
that.
I make a motion to approve with the two staff recommendations, and a condition that the RDA work in the best interest of the existing owners within the 125-foot area to the north of the RDA-owned parcel 2-98 to maintain access to businesses in the affected area.
Excellent.
Do you
Did
want
somebody
this
get
little
that
piece of
down?
paper that
No.
says all that?
Yeah, oh,
It's got a little piece of paper, it's got all of it on it.
Dina will gladly take
I'll second
that.
that way.
I'll pass that on down.
There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't talking during that because I was writing that out.
No.
Gotcha.
Has the floor been closed?
The floor has been.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why not make it a condition, though? That's the thing, it just sounds, it
Because it's
seems
red
like.
tape.
It-
It's red tape.
Yeah, I don't want to make it any
Red
harder
tape.
to.
We're making it more difficult.
Because at any point, that access could go away anyway.
We could lose that out.
So we just want the RDA
Yeah.
to work in
And then
the
you're
best
tied to
interest
it.
of everybody.
Yeah.
So,
It's a half an acre, I don't know what's going on there anyway,
Has the railroad been asked about that alleyway in the back?
They were
Have we
not-
made,
I got contacted for
have
this.
we asked them, hey, are you interested in selling us that piece?
Yeah.
I can tell you that I've been directed to speak with the railroad on other parcels,
Yeah.
like under the Ashland
Yeah.
Street Bridge.
Oh,
They don't return a phone call.
oh, okay, in that same area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that whole.
from my
huge
experience, the
area.
railroad will not sell anything. The CN won't. The older railroads would. The Canadian National generally will not sell any property. They won't. For us to get one crossing over the railroad, we have to remove two. And that's after a year of them not calling us back. Usually we have to wait until they need something from us.
And have they renegotiated easements?
They haven't. I don't know if I'd want this easement to be opened up, because I'm guessing it's probably
Yeah.
$1, or it's
Also, when I talk
$240
about
a year.
240 right here.
They're gonna probably
Maybe
come
they don't
back
know about
saying,
it.
well,
Yeah, that might
more.
be.
From 1949.
Well, no, that was $30 in 1949, so they do know about it and they
Okay.
increased the price.
$250 for a year, that's not bad.
Oh, right.
Right,
No.
we don't want to bring it to their
Don't
attention.
poke the bear.
Right.
But I mean, Michael, to your comment, yes, you could be more forceful with it and say you must provide access
I mean, I
as a
think
condition.
the consensus is that everyone wants this, and sending it as a nice thought, I mean, I don't want to say we don't trust the RDA, but I mean, it's just a matter of, if that's what we want, that's what we want, they can change it, and council can change it, correct, if they want to.
Correct.
So,
I think the thing about must, though, is that what if we do lose access to that alleyway, and then we're making them put that in there even though we don't have that alley anymore?
And now they're fighting a fight against the railroad.
Right.
So did you officially make a motion?
That was my official motion.
Oh,
Well, Dave,
okay.
I mean, you brought up a good point, though, of creating another potential alley back there, because that building's going to be removed.
There's a
and-
lot.
It opens it up,
Oh.
the one that would block
Yeah.
it.
Well, you go back to that aerial, Tom.
The RDA.
I think
decided
Rum
to do that in the
Runners,
best interest.
your building goes pretty far back, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
No, that's the
It's
building.
It's
only
the one
the
that's
grocery
going down.
I mean, it's a moment of opportunity, is it not, to kind of fix it
Yeah,
in the
so you
future?
could,
in
you
case-
know, just bring something down. Let's
But
not create something.
it would need to go all the way around though, right?
Well,
You
There'd
need
have to
it.
be some,
technically, if you get to this back area is accessible already from
there.
Mason.
Right, but isn't the notion you want one way going out again? I
oh,
mean,
true, yeah.
That's the way
Yeah,
it
we
is
would just
now, and I
have to
bet
just
the
move
lease
the alleyway
area,
I
to
don't
look
think-
up another
does the lease
access.
area stop at the RDA property? Or does it come down to Third? Is that the extent of the leased area? Or does
I
it,
believe it goes all the way down to Third.
so it doesn't continue
oh,
further
good question.
down? There's
I'm
no
not sure.
alley per se?
Yeah, it
that
doesn't
goes
go further.
Oh,
So-
gotcha,
so
yeah.
only to this
It's,
point.
there's nothing else there.
I mean, if this is an opportunity for us in the plan right now to just expand that, so for the future, you don't have to worry about that. Have the easement going to the properties
What about-
before another building goes up.
But it's only, it's like, it's half-assed towards it.
What about
It's
this?
not actually creating the alley, it's just
You know,
encouraging it.
What about this option that you could vacate Third with the condition that access to, I can't read the address, 7 Rum Runners?
715.
To the back of Rum Runners is provided, so if it's not through the railroad alley, it could be, so let's say they put, I'm just thinking totally wild here, but
Yeah.
a building goes up here with a small parking lot here that you drive through, and they provide an easement that they can get back to the back of Rum Runners. Now that, they still would have to angle to get back out, but it's pretty tight back there anyway. I mean, even, as you mentioned, the alley's only 12 feet, it's hard for a truck to get there. I'm shocked if they would deliver there. I'd deliver out front. But I'm not skilled.
Isn't the access though, I mean, I understand the alley, but isn't the access a width through that block we're gonna create? Isn't that where we want to recommend access through that? So even if there's an alley in the back, don't we want access out to Broadway through our
Well,
developed land we're gonna do?
That's what,
potentially out to
Commissioner
Broadway, but
Vincent
if you were to fill the frontage like you did with this block. So if I don't have historic photos here, but I'm guessing the beer garden was an access at one point for the Rum Runners building.
It looks like it.
So that was filled in. So these people may not necessarily need access back behind the building.
Behind it, but I think the buildings in black, okay, on the north side, would appreciate not only access to the back, but be able to go out to Broadway south of their buildings. That's what I heard. Maybe I
Yeah.
misheard.
right.
It's the easiest route for a truck or a
No,
dump truck
okay,
or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So isn't that the access we're asking you to consider, is access through that block?
To the alley, correct.
To the alley,
But again, if the alley goes away, the
Right,
access is
but
pointless.
I don't want to confuse, let's just imagine the alley's always there. So we're talking about access through that block we're going to create, that big one,
Sure.
right? We want access
Well,
through that,
A half acre big one.
a
Right.
half acre big one. Right.
But yes, you could, just as Michael had said, you could require access, condition the vacation on that access is provided.
Okay, but isn't that what you meant, Ken, when you made that, the motion?
Not as a condition.
Not as a
Not-
condition,
yeah,
but
but-
just that.
Strong
Consider
words.
it. Okay.
Yeah, and you could make it a condition, or if you wanted to.
Now, I just don't want to say that whoever develops there has to put in an official alley.
Right.
Like, if the developer comes in and has a parking lot that allows that access, and they put an easement, perfect.
Right.
If they want to put an alley that wraps all the way around and comes out closer to the buildings to the south, like
Right.
Public House there, if they want to do that, put it
Okay.
in.
Okay.
But instead of putting a condition that they have to do this exact thing, maybe their development says an alley goes a
Okay.
certain way or not another, you know.
But you optimist.
But
They're
can we-
gonna do
but-
the right thing.
The RDA does the right thing. Like, they're,
For clarification, couldn't you put in a requirement that does just that, that allows them the options to say an alleyway?
Well, now we're over litigating it now.
that's the thing.
I'm just asking the question to staff. Thank
I
you.
think if you just said access, it's going to give them the ability to
And none.
think about different types of access, whether it's through a parking lot or through an alley, or, I don't think, as a plan commission, you want to start designing the site before it's even know what they want to
You're not the
do.
expert.
Exactly.
But the point is, you want to get access. Is what I'm hearing is you want access to the back of Rum Runners.
Well, for all those properties.
Well, the properties to the north have access
Have
onto
access
Mason. So the only one that would be losing access would be Rum Runners,
Or are you suggesting you want
if the alley were to go away.
egress, north and south?
Yeah, there's not enough room for that.
There's not,
Yeah.
no.
Now with the 12-foot lane.
But I guess my point is, you could put the condition or the recommendation or the strong urging that access from this block, or the block, reach Rum Runners.
Well,
I think my motion
I
covers
think-
that.
I like
I
that
think
motion.
we should.
Has it been seconded?
It has
I
not.
seconded it.
Who did?
You did?
Yeah.
All right, oh, we got a second there.
I didn't realize
I
you had a
like
second.
the suggestive language, and we've been reassured that the owners of the properties to the north could come up with an alternative through their own property if that were absolutely necessary.
If they lost the alley.
They could.
Yeah.
And hopefully
Probably wouldn't
won't
like
be.
it, but they could.
No. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Rubinski and a second by Commissioner Bremer with the two conditions plus a strongly worded statement, suggestive statement.
Would you like Dina to reread that?
Yes, please. Sure.
Oh, sure. The RDA work in the best interest of existing owners within the area 125 feet to the north of RDA-owned parcel 2-98 to maintain access to businesses.
Excellent.
Well done, Pam.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, that was, okay. Go ahead.
Sorry. Just for clarification, I guess, for next steps, there is a public hearing now that will go to city council at its next meeting, and then there is a 40-day wait where this action won't actually be formalized until November 7th, I believe, is that meeting date.
Okay.
But the September 19th would be the time to go to the
Public hearing.
council to voice your public hearing.
Gotcha.
If you want to make it more strong or object or have suggestions or whatever.
I'll be at that meeting, just so you know.
I think you're
So-
fired.
Right,
And you're older, yeah.
right.
I just want to say, I appreciate other business owners coming out and supporting development down in that area, because that area, you know, we're focusing on it, so.
We appreciate that the city's putting a little more attention on the South Broadway area. We're doing our very best and work together, and everything you guys do helps us a lot.
Absolutely, keep up the good work.
Vice versa. It comes back right at us too. Great event this past weekend.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
All right, and then moving on then to item number 6, Consideration with possible action on a request to release a 30-foot utility easement in the East Town Shopping Center at 2360 and 2380 East Mason Street, submitted by HOB LOB, Green Bay East LLC, property owner and applicant.
Thank you, Chair. This is to discontinue a utility easement. It's for the properties 2360 and 2380 on East Mason Street, which is in the East Town Shopping Center. The parcel, you can see CSM 9647. Actually, if you can skip down to a different, there we go. Okay, so you can see how there is a future building proposed on Lot 1 of CSM 9647, and you can see where the easement goes through that property. That particular easement in the hash area is what's, they want to vacate or discontinue that. There is an easement in the northeast corner, and then there's also easement along the south, so that property can be, there are easements, other easement options available. There is nothing in the easement. Nobody had any objection at all, because there's nothing in there, right? Alder Morgan, adjoining property owners, along with the agencies, were all notified, and there were no objections that were received.
If you get a chance, if you haven't been out to East Town in a while, this is gonna help start building out those in-lots. And it already looks totally different.
It does.
Yeah, really
So
nice.
our recommendation is to approve the request.
Right. You gonna make a motion?
I can't do anything.
I'll move to approve.
You can do plenty.
I mean, I can't make motions.
Second.
Oh, second, okay, so we got a motion by Commissioner Daniels, a second by Commissioner Braddock. Any further discussion? All right, we'll go ahead with a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward to City Council for September 19th.
Do you have some?
And moving on.
Can I just go
All right, and moving
for myself?
moving on to item number 7, consideration with possible action on consultant selection for the comprehensive plan update.
Correct. Now, this is an action item, but it's really kind of an informational item. So back in February, we sent out a request for proposals for a firm to do comp planning. We received 6 sets of proposals. Out of those, we interviewed 4. Out of those 4, it got narrowed down to 2. And out of those 2, it went to 1, which is House-Seal Levine. So what you have in front of you, I unfortunately was out of the office a lot the last 2 weeks. I didn't get a chance to put them in your electronic packet. However, I don't want to hold this up any longer from going forward. But you have 2 things. So one is House-Seal Levine scope of work, looks like this. And the second, you have this is out of their proposal. It's really sort of like the resume and examples of work for House-Seal Levine. And then also a group called All Together, which is a like a community engagement, branding, marketing type group. And so they submitted this application together. So I just wanted to give you those to take a look at. And then John, if you could kind of cruise down, I'll go over the scope of services. So following this meeting, if the Planning Commission recommends approval, we put together a full professional service agreement. So that would have all the legalese in it and the requirements for insurance and everything else. But this is generally the scope that's going to be going forward for the comp planning process. And if you can share that, John, thank you. So, there we go. So, really, in our request for proposals, jump back a couple. There you go. We had really 6 items that we told these companies they had to do for us. Development of a project work plan, data gathering and analysis, identifying issues and opportunities, creating a vision, creating a plan, and putting it into action. I had mentioned we had the 6 firms. The 4 were interviewed, and then now you can put the next one, John. Thank you. And so I'm not going to read through these, but it's basically House-Seal Levine is a planning firm, a design firm, an architectural firm, and All Together is a design studio. And I kind of mentioned what they did before. I do want to mention that Hosea Levine has done a lot of comp planning. I think they've done over 200 comp plans. They've done work in Wisconsin, in Oshkosh, a lot of things in Oshkosh. And I think they've even done some work up here, but a smaller scale. Go to the next one. They are proposing a 7-step approach. And the first thing I want to say with that as well, the first tasks in this approach are to refine the work plan after talking to the mayor, after talking to the department heads, and some of the stakeholders. So it may not end up exactly like this, or like you see in your packets. And really the big thing in that packet is this last page. This is a timeline. So all these descriptions of what's going on here is described in the scope. So it's designed to be an 18-month project. I've never seen one go that fast. I'm guessing it's probably going to be more like 24 months, but we're shooting for 18. And it starts with step 1, which is the initiation. So that's really coming to the city, locking in what our goals are, developing our engagement plan, creating an advisory group. Some people call it a stakeholder group, some people call it a comp plan committee, but it's an advisory group. Start collecting data, doing city tours, engaging with the city leadership, and then holding a large workshop for the advisory group, and then a city leadership roundtable, and that's typically a council type of thing. Usually it's the council and then the chairs of most of the commissions go on those roundtable groups. And it's just, what have you been hearing? It's a sort of a brainstorming session. And from that, we start developing, in that project, they develop that sort of game plan of how we're going to go forward with this. The big one is always the public engagement. That is always the hugest element to any of these comp planning activities. And that is step 2, which is public and stakeholder engagement. So that engagement communication plan would be created. Spanish translation services are very, very important. When we get to the budget at the end of this, I'll tell you how important that is. But we are at about a little over 20% Spanish speakers in the city. Not necessarily their only language, but that's the largest demographic that we have in the city. They create a project website with a program called Map Social. It's an interactive program, so you can click on the map, add comments, draw lines, and do things like that. An online survey. There'd be key stakeholder and small focus group interviews. Workshop kits will be created for city staff, and that's another element to keep costs down. City staff is going to do a lot of outreach, so we'll end up at farmers markets, we'll end up at, well, maybe not at like a concert venue like they had this weekend, but those types of events, and we'll be gathering data with those workshop kits, which will also be given to us in Spanish as well. So we may not be able to necessarily speak, but we can give them the documentation in Spanish. A lot of the online things, there's Google Translate, which isn't perfect, but it does work with a lot of those types of online engagement things. There would also be pop-up engagements itself, so that would be done by the consultant, larger pop-up engagements, and really kind of 2 of them. But at the end of this step 2, we're going to get key themes and takeaway summary. So what did we get from all this engagement? What's the city looking for? What's the elected officials looking for? Do they all jive? All this stuff goes to the advisory group, who kind of make a strong recommendation and guide how that's going. We will periodically throughout this whole process be coming back to the Plan Commission at your regular meetings and reporting. But really it's that advisory group that's really driving this. And that's usually a mixture of some public, some private individuals. The third step is a conditions analysis. That's basically where we're going to determine, I think we've talked about that before, this comp plan is going to be a district, corridor, and nodes. Nodes could be what we were calling special areas, like the downtown will be a node. Or pick a corner. The corner of Main and Mason might be a node. I suspect Mason might be a corridor though, but that'll all be determined. They're going to review all the past plans we have in studies, and we have a lot of them. Basically go through, see what hasn't been done, what's been done, is this still valuable? All that is really important as we go out to the neighborhoods and to the districts to say, hey, your current plan says X, Y, Z. None of this is done. you still agree with that? It's 20 years old. And kind of get that back and forth. Also, you can start sharing the demographics with the neighborhoods or the corridors. One thing that we've heard historically, not so much anymore, but historically is, I don't want anything but single families. When you tell somebody in their neighborhood that you're already 45%, not single, do you realize that? Well, no, where are all these? Sometimes information is your greatest weapon, right? So they'll do all that kind of stuff. They're going to do demographic and economic profiles, and we'll end up with an existing conditions memo that'll be presented to the advisory group. So it's basically just, this is where you're at right now. Again, I don't put in here that this is be coming back to Plan Commission all the time. We'll try to be concise here, but we'll be bringing this stuff back through here. Number 4 is creating community vision, goals, and key recommendations. So that's a big workshop to basically make a vision statement for the city and also our sub areas, which might be a little different than the city overall, and also goals that we're trying to establish. And then we get a key recommendations memo out of that. Again, goes to the advisory group as a working session, because this really, that step 4 is really the important part. What's your vision? What's your goals? Everything's going to start focusing to get to those. So that advisory group at that point's really got to give the direction to staff and the consultant. Step 5 is actually drafting the district corridor and node framework. So where they are, what they look like, what those personalities are going to be. We're guessing anywhere right now from 8 to 12, 8 to 15 neighborhood districts. And those aren't neighborhood associations, they're just areas. We call them neighborhood districts. They have all kinds of uses in them. Corridors are things like Military Avenue corridor's got a plan, Velp Avenue corridor's got a plan, University's got a plan. They're probably going to do another 2 or 3 corridors. We've been trying to kind of push them staff-wise to Mason Street, East Mason especially. But again, that's all going to be coming out of the stakeholder and all the other advisory groups. This is kind of where we're going. Webster would be a good one too. We're in no shortage of corridors. And then also they would do at that stage, I think that's a 2 to 3 personality types. So areas that might need some branding. I know might be a dirty word for some, but they would do some branding and some focus, like, here's your image for this area and run with it. And so that all together is a marketing firm that kind of puts that stuff together. So sort of like the shipyard had kind of done on their own. I mean, we started it, the city started it with the shipyard proper, but then those neighbors and those businesses have kind of been running with it. Maybe not exactly the way we do it, but they've grasped that. They go with the same color schemes, so that it's going to pull that kind of stuff out, and we'll end up getting a very draft land use plan. So what land uses do you want to see all over the place? Step 6 is the citywide plans and policies. So that's where you start getting the plans or putting together. The drafts are being built, they're going back and forth, they're going back out to the public to get comment. And they deal with primarily land use and development sites. Oftentimes it's like this is a development opportunity site. Transportation, parks. They're going to refine the district's corridor and nodes more to be specific. And that goes back to the advisory group and a second giant community host. So at that point, in step 6, you have a draft plan together. Probably not written every word perfectly, but you have a draft plan together. And step 7 is the document itself. So that is creating the document, the final draft document, and an implementation strategy. Typically, that looks like a table saying, X and Y is supposed to be done by the Community Foundation. Z to be done by the Department of Public Works. And it gives you an action step of what to do. The advisory group could then modify that. It gets formal review and adoption by the Plan Commission, and then off to the council. After that, we are paying a little bit of extra money as well to create an interactive executive summary. So if you remember us talking a long time ago now, we don't want this plan to be I should have brought mine because there are 2 documents this thick. We want it to be more of like a dashboard or a storyboard type document. All the information will still be in appendixes and it'll be here, so if you want to dig that stuff up, you can look at it, you can use it. We would use it. Most people don't care.
But way more user-friendly.
Right, they just want to kind of look at a map, say what uses are going where, what should stuff look like, and what are the key recommendations. So the thought was, in our comp plan now, we have hundreds and hundreds of recommendations. You have a neighborhood district, and maybe has 3 or 4, 5 recommendations, that's it. Once we click off 3 or 4 of those, we'll bring that back out as staff and add 3 or 4 more. So it's a more dynamic document that continues to grow. A 20-year one gets stagnant, some of the stuff falls off because it's somebody objected or economies have changed or whatever, and it's very difficult to go back in a giant document and try to find all of that, clean it out. So again, at the end, the last 2 pages, you're going to have this schedule, and you'll kind of see the schedule laid out. The yellow stars are deliverables. The white openings are meetings to be conducted by House C. Levine, and the black are meetings to be conducted by city staff. So you'll see in that blue section in number 2, the do-it-yourself pop-up engagements, there's 2 big white ones and a lot of black ones. So staff is going to be doing quite a bit of those. But to tell you honestly, once they give us the toolkits and we sit through a couple meetings with them, it's gathering data, right? And we're pretty good at that. So again, that scope and that timeline may change following the coordination meetings, but the anticipated cost is not to exceed $280,000. However, the biggest change there is step 2, the public is stakeholder engagement. That, I believe, in the last one was at about $35,000. When we added translation services, it originally went up $50,000 for translation services. We went back and had them cut out. We don't need a whole comp plan written in Spanish. Google Translate will have to do that. And we really honed it in on the public engagement events and some of the documentation in Spanish. Originally, there was talk at the staff level that we should also have it in Hmong, we should have it in Somalian. Unfortunately, the cost just goes exponential. And then Jose Levine did say, you're going to have a hard time finding interpreters for those events, and your timeline's going to stretch way out. So it is unfortunate that we can't be all languages, but again, Spanish is by far our largest second language for the city. But at the end of the day, we're at $280,000. That gives us about a $20,000 contingency that we're keeping on hold in case we need another study, or we need something else to be done, or if there's an overage. So they did put a note in there that the Spanish translation anticipated to cost $20,000, but there might be extra costs, and they'll stop at that point and come back to the city. So whether we can tap into our reserve or go back to council and ask them for some cash or pull it out of some other funding source. And staff is going to be looking at, even while this is going forward, at grant funding. There's not a lot out there for comp planning, but there's a little bit. You usually have to tailor it to something else. So if you have a section of your code that deals with, let's say, heavy transportation things, you can go apply for transportation planning grants. But they generally like to see something that you're going to put in the ground, not a plan. So they're not.
We're covered. I think these are ARPA dollars, right?
These are ARPA dollars, and we have 300 allocated and we're sitting on right now. So there's not as much contingency I'd like. I'd like to have 30,000, 10%, but 20,000 is better than being right at it. At some of our last planning exercises, we've been right dead at the cap. Out of all those 6 proposals, all of them had the same price points. So there was same price, the same quote. We had put in that original one not to exceed $250, so I could keep my 30 if I want, and have a little bit of wiggle room, because you always have wiggle room. They come back saying, well, you want that, well, it's going to cost a little extra. And so the wiggle room was a little more than I had anticipated, but every single proposal that came in were all at $250. They all were capped out at what we said not to exceed. And frankly, it's probably a pretty good price for a city this size. And we are taking on a lot of the public outreach on it for ourselves. But to be honest, we are from here, and we probably great job. So anyway, yes, I'm sure we will. So that's kind of the basics. This is again the scope. And so this is kind of how that whole thing will play out. And I gave you that so you can kind of take it with you and dig into it a little bit more. But at this point, I want to get it in front of the council at the next meeting so we can just start moving every month. Right now is an opportune time because the first couple sections, getting your getting sort of your work program and stuff in place, and data collection are great wintertime activities. Public engagement is best for spring, summer, fall, real difficult in the winter, so our timing's perfect right now. If we hold off and don't get it to council till December, let's say, or November,
Yeah.
it's just gonna eat up
Yeah.
that stuff. So, with that, I guess if you have any questions, I will gladly answer, but we are asking you to recommend approval of this with one condition, that the scope of services and professional service agreement is approved by the law department before being forwarded to council.
Of course.
I'll get that done this week. They've already looked at it.
Looks solid.
The one, I know this was prepared by the firm, so
Correct.
the only disappointment I have is that I don't see neighborhood associations listed anywhere.
Yeah,
Groups.
the associations wouldn't probably be listed because you're going to get 2 or 3 in each one of the neighborhood districts.
Sure, but some intentionality with it.
Yeah, and if, I didn't actually, I don't know if we gave them to you before, if you looked in the request for proposals, the proposals they sent in, again, this is the scope, proposals did go back to neighborhood associations. And that was before they thought they were doing neighborhood association boundaries, but they're much too small.
Sure, that does make sense.
Yeah, and we're still, again, the leadership is going to have to go forward and tell us who they want on the advisory, but we suspect there'll be several members from the Green Bay neighborhoods who hopefully then will report back to Green Bay neighborhoods and then report back to the neighborhood associations. And that's kind of how that all works.
But that outreach is, we're going to include associations.
Oh, for
That's-
sure.
Right.
Well, we need
We're doing
the
outreach.
associations to get the
Right.
word out.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's better for us, I mean, yeah.
Yes, so just,
Yeah, without the associations, we'd have a much harder time, I suspect. It's going to be hard in the areas that don't have active ones.
sure.
But we still have a lot of people out there that are active, they're just not enough for the
Yeah.
association to be active. There's usually 1 or 2 people still doing
Right.
associations.
We may or may not use that to form some new associations.
Yes, I was gonna say, yeah,
So- Yeah, actually, that.
Or reform, right?
Yeah.
So,
that would be great. And then the other question, are these public documents? I know they weren't included in
They
the
are,
packet.
yes.
Could they be somehow put as an addendum or something?
To put onto the, yeah, I think
So
we could
people
load
can
them up.
access them if they, or if they're watching the recording or something, they can.
Yeah, we can put them up. Well, and again, yeah, this is a little later, but when the website's up, it's going to be a dedicated, right now we're calling it Forward GB. I don't know if that'll still be the same name. We kind of came up with that a couple years ago. It is painted in the clerk's wall, so it's. I might want to continue doing that. That had nothing to do, that was separate. She put that up there because she liked it. Well, actually, Laura put it up there.
this is going to council,
This is going to council.
so these should be attached, so council.
Yeah, they'll all be on the council.
They will be on- okay. If
But
they're
if
on
we
the
can get it
council,
on the
yeah.
plan commission, retro onto the plan
Yeah.
commission agenda too, we'll do that.
That'd be nice, yeah, thank you.
So Dave, timing wise, we get this in front of council, when would this, and that goes fine. When would this actually, that timeline first kick off?
I'm gonna start right away, we probably start in October.
I want to see this thing get moving, we've been talking about it for so long.
Exactly, and that's why I do apologize for not having it all there, and I know you
Yeah.
can't read this right now. I mean, there isn't, none of it's really set in stone, so it's kind of rough to, you're gonna go and say, well, I want this changed. Sure, it can be changed at any time. But, yeah, I just didn't have time to get it all on there. But I did not want to wait either, I wanted to go.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I would have liked it to have been last month, but we've actually been going back and forth with the scope of services since June. And the biggest holdup was translation. We wanted them to do it for no money. And they didn't want to do it at all. So that became a heavy sticking point. But we got them actually, they found a local firm to do it up here. They're out of Chicago, so they have a lot of services down there, but the cost to bring up a translation service from Chicago is
Sure, yeah.
vicious.
It'd be crazy.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Pranik, a second by Commissioner Bremer. Any further discussion?
That was motion to approve with the condition.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And you'll all get a copy of the actual professional service agreement and the final scope when it's done. Probably email it.
Awesome.
All right, and then moving on to informational director's report.
All right, let me give you a little update on some of the development that's happening. At the last council, I believe all of the planning items were passed, held on the Bank Mutual site. I was actually at a meeting, it still is in the original name of the original owner, right? But I was at a county board meeting that they approved the purchase of that site. But I'm not sure where that is, so that item is still on hold yet for us. We continue to work with Merge. They're really moving aggressively forward on the project now at Shipyard. Yay! So we're looking to get.
Did we see some stuff?
Well, I'm thinking in the spring, I think is the goal to get in the ground, so, which is great, because they were a little bit on hold for a while.
If you haven't been out there, though, the boardwalk and stuff is getting.
Yeah, it's
saw
really
that.
neat.
That's the Shipyard. If you haven't got out to the Shipyard, he's jumping ahead of my list.
So, right.
Go out to the Shipyard, look at that, and also look at the murals that have been
Yep.
painted, which are way cool. The City East Apartments, they're in the ground. That's the Walnut property with MF and United Way, so they're active on that one. Bay City Lofts, I believe they're closing tomorrow or a week from tomorrow. That's University Avenue. What started in military is now at University Avenue.
Right.
So he's ready to go on that, getting in the ground quickly. 200 Monroe, so that's been on hold for a while. That's our old farmer's market site. I just spoke with Ted. He had to rebid his entire project. He had an issue with, his original plan had underground parking, if you recall that, and that the funding source he had was not going to allow that underground parking. So he actually redesigned the site to have not underground parking. And we haven't seen these plans yet, just kind of rudimentary pencil drawings of it. There's still the same number of units, but the parking would be inside and be hidden by the apartments on the outside.
So that increase the height then? If they want to get the same number of units?
No, I don't think the height's increased. I think, we haven't seen plans yet.
Okay.
But he's redesigned that and he's rebid it. And he's thinking the numbers are looking pretty good. So the plan is to take that development agreement to the RDA in October.
Good.
Hopefully with the numbers that all work and to adjust the timelines on that development agreement. So fingers crossed on that one, right? JBS, I believe they're starting to, you guys are working on an RFP, right, for the housing portion of that development?
Yep, we're just
That we'll
starting.
be sending out, so that's a huge housing RFP, because it's just got so many different types of housing
It's a
on that
really
site.
cool project. Yeah, I really like that.
And the consulting firm right now is doing the engineering design for the roadways, the park, and the agricultural element, the urban farm. So they're actually, the as-built, the to-be-built plans are coming forward right now. They're doing them.
All right, let's see, we've got Newland Cherry. So we're working with the developer, Newland Development, on the old Boston Store parking lot, adjacent to the Bay Lake building. They're very aggressive and moving forward on information. We have not seen the plans on that either, but we've provided a whole lot of information. They're giving us stuff back and forth. So I think what they've told us, their goal is spring of next year on the ground as well. So that means they'd have to come to us pretty quick with development agreement in October, November, so just crossed on that one.
So, quick question on that. So that's the parking lot.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But they're doing stuff in the building too, right?
The lofts. Different.
Yeah, different property.
So,
Right.
That's RDA owns.
so
the
RDA
side.
owns the parking lot, and then Bay City Law, or not Bay City Laws,
City Center.
City Center Gateway Collective is working on the Bay Lake Bank building.
The second floor of that.
I gotta keep track of the
Right.
bays.
Yeah.
I know.
Figure out where
The
those
second
are gonna
floor.
Well, that's why it could be two similar developments right next to each other?
I don't think they'll be similar. I think the development on the RDA site will be large. We're hoping multiple story. At this point, we haven't seen anything yet, so,
But the developer has made skyscrapers in other cities.
yeah, if you
And
look
one in
up
Milwaukee.
new land from, like Milwaukee, they've got a number of buildings
They
there.
do mass timber stuff, they got all of those.
And we look at.
Yeah, they just built the
Yeah.
first
No,
25-story
high-end housing.
wooden
By
wooden
Metro.
frame structure in Milwaukee.
That will not be what we get, but. No, probably doesn't.
Come on.
I mean, I'd be happy. We haven't seen the plans yet.
We haven't seen the
Maybe.
plans yet.
That's
We're excited. They're very excited about working with us, so.
And I'm assuming Cherry Street would be the main parking then for, if all that parking is eliminated, we brought them to Cherry Street.
Yep, I believe there's a lot of space in the Cherry Street ramp.
The parking study, was that 2 months ago that got put through? You should take a look at it, it's interesting.
Does it show the numbers for that ramp?
Wasn't it like, it was like 48% or something occupancy at mass, or at most?
Yeah, there's room in that road.
Yeah.
The former Badger Sheet Metal site, Impact 7, had an option there. I think they're working with Ellers to look at TID information. Not sure where that's going to go. I think there was a really big gap on that project, so still waiting on that. The fort, the rail yards are under construction, moving forward. They'll be done, I think they're going to occupy in the spring. Continue to work with the county on moving the coal piles. Haven't heard anything of late with that. Carnivore is still going strong. Garrett Bader and his project on the corner of Dousman and Broadway, the old Bangkok Gardens. It's under construction,
yeah.
right? There's units above.
Windows are
That's
in.
hot, windows are in.
Didn't he have one on Monroe and Maine?
That option
Right across
expired.
Expired? Okay.
Mhm.
Just from Garrett.
Yeah. The Jazz House is really far on the corner of Walnut and Barrett, kitty corner from East High, their townhomes project. So I think they're hoping to occupy in the fall. Habitat Homestead is moving forward. They just had their dedication. That's the old Encompass site, right? They're looking to, I think, start construction on one of the townhomes this fall, and I think they're looking for the street to go through this fall as well. So that's still moving forward. We've got a project at Monroe in Chicago, Cherry Faith Properties with Duane Cherry. He's under option right now. I think we extended it to November potentially. Still working on numbers, getting that back and forth. We'll see where that lands.
Well, and that's a good point with that one. He did get approval, the council did put the parking requirement back.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, come on, council.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
There was quite a few people calling and complaining. Every neighbor called and complained that there's no parking.
We tried.
Yes.
And we are also considering, hopefully Paul Kirks isn't watching, putting a drop-off zone on the north side of Chicago, because there's no parking on Chicago Street. There's no parking on Monroe, and there's no parking on Madison. So with his constituents, probably going to be a lot of drop-off and pickup. So, but I
Still
have
waiting to
introduced
see
that
the
to
final
DPW
plan.
again. So.
You just did on record.
The cat's out of the bag now. And then Peter Nugent has his project at 222 Cherry, which is the old Bosses, and then the apartments above. He is reworking his numbers as well, and we're hoping to take that to the October RDA meeting. He had to get a second appraisal, I think, because there was some time lapse, and then he's rebidding. Construction costs have been crazy, but I've heard that some of them are coming down a little bit. So I'm hoping that his second round of numbers are coming in good. So.
Be a lot of activity right there.
Right? Yeah, so that's my update.
That's a good update.
Yeah, right? Thank you.
That's good stuff.
Well,
Say it all
it is-
optimistically.
It is super encouraging, because we've been seeing this stuff. Next year, you're going to see cranes in the air. I guarantee it.
Yep.
I do have one other quick question. You mentioned this, I think, in your first or second update, but the Mutual Bank building?
Yes.
A
the
lot of
Bank Mutual,
discussion,
that's that
Bank
gas
Mutual, I
station.
know the gas station is going, do we know what's going to be there, or is it still up in the air? I know the county bought that parcel.
Well, I don't think they bought it yet,
Yeah, not
but they
just bought it.
approved it. They
Oh,
went
okay.
through the body to approve purchasing that. They wanted it for, I think they were talking about part of it, library parking use, and then potentially part of it, maybe some other use from the county, or they've actually brought up working with us too to potentially redevelop that site. Like, I'd love to see a redevelopment site there that might include parking for the library. I'd love to see an apartment that would skywalk to the library even, would be cool. So, but I guess it's really in the hands of, once the county knows it, what they're gonna do with it, so.
But the
We've
building itself
extended.
is likely to disappear. The current building
Probably not.
is likely to
I'm not sure about that. I'm told the building is bigger than you think it is, that the basement is bigger than you think it is. Right, so I'm not sure.
With construction
It's a
costs.
unique building.
Right.
handsome, but
It's a
it's
building.
unique.
It's
Yeah.
unique.
It's kind of a chalet,
Kind
yeah.
of rework it a little bit, newer materials.
I mean, in reality, if that block, if the parking lot that's owned by Associated across the alley was redeveloped, the building wouldn't seem so out of place.
Yeah.
It looks small all by itself in an empty block.
Yeah, that's true.
Would I still like to see 5, 6 stories there? Yes. So,
Let's get the parking lot filled first.
Yes.
and I heard you guys talking a little bit earlier. Yes, the same restaurant that was going to go in this building is going to be going into Gippers. So much too far away from me to go.
Yeah, it's
I'm sure I'll still go.
It's not downtown.
You don't have to walk to the one downtown. I don't drive anywhere.
You don't drive to it?
I gotta be in a mile radius of home. I'm a 15-minute city guy.
Get it in the plan.
15 minutes. That's how.
This is Green Bay, you actually can go from end to end.
Yeah, in a car.
During rush hour.
No, we have to shift to the next meeting.
All right, and the date of the next meeting is September 25th, 2023.
I am traveling that week, so I wouldn't.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, sorry, that's a good point. If we are gonna be missing a meeting, is it the same procedure? Because we haven't since, I forgot how many weeks ago, that changed, I forgot her name, sorry, the new one, the new lady that's usually sends out the meetings.
Megan?
Megan, thank you. It seems like we haven't seen as many communications. Is it still just email her if we're gonna miss a meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
I would love to have heard what you just said.
When the meeting notifications we would get, like, hey, it's been posted and stuff like that, we don't.
Yeah, we haven't been getting those.
Which is fine, I know when to
Oh, okay.
look for it, but.
Okay.
If we're gonna miss a meeting, usually I would just reply to that email saying.
And these are unreplyable, these ones that we've been getting.
Well, would you
been
prefer to get those
All the
notifications again?
notifications about being published and then
I
the
get
next
those.
meeting.
If she sends them out to
Yeah.
staff, I mean, it's just, she probably just not,
Oh,
didn't
I,
include.
I'm
the
not,
issue.
I
Then
don't
I
even-
just got
I'm
one.
not.
I get the notifications for the agenda and then for the minutes. are
Oh, you do?
published. Yeah.
When the minutes are published, I get that
Yeah.
after the meeting, but the only thing I got, I didn't even get like, here's the agenda, can you approve it even? I didn't get an
Nope.
email like that.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't get
Extra
anything. The
stuff.
only email I got is, it's been published, here is the link.
We'll review it with
We're supposed to
Megan.
review that.
Right.
Yeah, Megan just took this over and,
Right.
I get it.
you know, just did it for a long time, so.
Yeah, because I
Right.
had said when she said
I
the
was
next
gonna
meeting
do
is the
email
25th,
address.
that's not counting it, which I would not.
So I make sure
be
to
here.
take
So
my
then Jake said,
method.
oh, what is the new
Right.
procedure since we
Right,
haven't
'cause
getting all
just-
the
Yeah.
notifications? So.
So we don't get stuck with 4 people here and have a 4.5 hour meeting.
Only for the county can come about a property.
Yeah, exactly. We argued for how long?
And then when we came in the next meeting to prepare, they were like, oh, it's been,
Oh, never mind.
yeah, never mind, don't worry about it.
It's all part of it.
Cool.
Okay, all right.
That was a motion.
Who?
So we did it?
There was a motion and a second by Sid.
Okay, Sid, okay. By Sid or was it Sid?
The second.
Okay, that was a Sid, okay, oh, sorry. Motion by Commissioner Praddick, second by Commissioner Bremer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm ready for some.
I feel so aggressive, that's great.
So,
Right here in Rogers.
it's a pretty big update.